Acceptance and surrender in antidepressant withdrawal. The shift that changed everything. For years during antidepressant withdrawal, I fought desperately to get better faster. It wasn't until I learned the difficult lessons of acceptance and surrender that my relationship with healing began to change. This is the story of how letting go became one of the most important parts of my recovery. There is a phrase that gets used a lot in healing spaces: acceptance and surrender. When I was deep in antidepressant withdrawal, I hated those words. I didn't want to accept what was happening to me. I didn't want to surrender to it. I wanted my life back. I wanted my symptoms to stop. I wanted clear answers about when it would all be over. Most of all, I wanted to wake up one morning and discover it had all been a terrible nightmare. Instead, I found myself trapped in a situation that seemed to have no clear timeline and no obvious solution. Like so many people navigating withdrawal, I spent years trying to find a way to make healing happen faster. I searched endlessly for answers, reassurance, treatment, diets, supplements, therapies, and coping strategies. Every day felt like a race against the clock. My focus wasn't on how I could support myself through the process, it was how I could escape it. Looking back now, I can see how much pressure I was putting on myself. At the time, there was also pressure coming from outside sources. My employers understandably wanted to know when I would be returning to work, and although nobody intended to cause harm, the constant focus on getting better and returning to normal reinforced the urgency I was already feeling inside myself. I felt as though I should be recovering faster than I was. I felt guilty for not improving quickly enough. I felt frustrated that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't seem to force my mind and body to heal on the timeline I desperately wanted. The truth was that I wasn't just fighting withdrawal, I was fighting the reality of where I was. That fight consumed an enormous amount of energy. One of the most difficult moments in my entire journey came when I had to make the heartbreaking decision to leave my job. At the time, I was working in a role caring for and teaching children, and despite desperately wanting to continue, I simply wasn't well enough. Physically, mentally, and emotionally, I was struggling to function. With the support of my family, I made the incredibly difficult decision to walk away. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. I grieved deeply for the life I was losing. I worried about the financial impact. I worried about my future. I felt angry that I was being forced to make such enormous sacrifices because of a medication nobody had warned me could cause this kind of suffering. There was grief, frustration, fear, and resentment wrapped up in that decision. Yet, strangely, something shifted after I made it. Although leaving work was devastating, I also felt a relief that I hadn't expected. It was as though a weight had finally been lifted from my shoulders. For the first time, I stopped trying to force myself to keep up with an urgent pressure that my nervous system simply couldn't sustain. That was the moment I began to understand what acceptance and surrender really meant. Acceptance didn't mean I liked what was happening. It didn't mean I thought it was fair. It certainly didn't mean giving up hope. It simply meant acknowledging the reality of where I was and working from that place instead of constantly fighting against it. For so long, I had been resisting every aspect of withdrawal. I wanted my symptoms gone. I wanted certainty. I wanted my old life back. I wanted answers that nobody could give me. I was exhausting myself trying to push through something that was clearly not responding to force. Eventually, I realized that if I was going to survive this experience, I had to stop treating myself as the enemy. I had to stop judging myself for not healing quickly enough. I had to stop measuring myself against who I used to be. I had to stop expecting my body to do something it wasn't yet capable of doing. Most importantly, I had to meet myself where I was at. That sounds simple, but I found it incredibly difficult. Accepting my limitations felt painful. Slowing down felt uncomfortable. Making changes to my lifestyle felt unfair. Watching other people carry on with their lives while mine felt completely derailed was heartbreaking. There were many days I felt angry, resentful, and deeply sad about everything withdrawal had taken from me. But over time, I began to understand that acceptance wasn't the same thing as resignation. I wasn't giving up on healing. I was creating the conditions that allowed healing to happen. Instead of asking myself, how do I get out of this as quickly as possible? I started asking, what does my mind and body need from me today? That small shift changed everything. My focus moved away from forcing recovery and towards supporting recovery. I became more compassionate with myself. I stopped seeing rest as failure. I stopped treating every setback as evidence that I was broken. I started giving myself the same kindness and patience that I would have offered someone else going through something so difficult. The symptoms didn't disappear overnight. The uncertainty didn't magically vanish. The grief was still there, but my relationship with those things began to change. Rather than constantly battling against reality, I started working alongside it. Rather than demanding my body heal faster, I started trusting that healing was unfolding in its own time, even when I couldn't see it. And in my experience, that was when one of the most important shifts in healing began. If you're currently in the thick of antidepressant withdrawal, I know how difficult this might be to hear. When you're suffering, acceptance can feel impossible. Surrender can feel frightening. You may feel as though if you stop fighting, you're somehow giving up. That wasn't my experience. For me, surrender wasn't about giving up. It was about putting down the battle I was fighting within myself. It was about recognizing that my nervous system had already been through enough and deserved compassion rather than criticism. It was about understanding that healing could not be forced, no matter how much we wish it could. Most of us will be forced to make changes during withdrawal that we never wanted to make. We may have to adjust our expectations, reduce responsibilities, step back from work, change relationships, spend less, do less, and ask for more support than we ever imagined needing. None of that feels fair. None of that is easy. But sometimes healing asks us to stop living from a place where we wish we were and start caring for ourselves from the place we're actually at. I share this because I wish someone had explained it to me sooner. I wish I had understood that acceptance and surrender weren't signs of weakness. They were acts of self-compassion. They were ways of working with my mind and body instead of constantly fighting against them. And looking back now, I can see that some of the greatest healing happened when I finally stopped trying to hurry myself and started treating myself with patience, understanding, and the love I had needed all along. Because I learned many of these lessons through lived experience, I created the resources I wish I'd had during my own journey. My memoir, Swallowed Whole, shares my personal story in full, while my guides offer practical survivor-led support for those navigating tapering, withdrawal, healing, and rebuilding. My hope is simply that they help others feel less alone as they find their way through. Looking back now, I don't believe acceptance and surrender healed me. Time, healing, and the incredible ability of the mind and body to recover played their part. But acceptance changed how I experienced the journey. It allowed me to stop spending precious energy fighting myself and start directing that energy towards caring for myself instead. It helped me soften, breathe a little deeper, and trust that healing was still happening even when I couldn't see it. If you're in the middle of withdrawal right now, I know how difficult it can be to let go of the need for answers, certainty, and timelines. But perhaps the greatest gift you can gift yourself is the same one I eventually learned to give myself: compassion. Not because this journey is fair, easy, or something you should ever have had to endure, but because you deserve kindness while you move through it. One day, this chapter will be part of your story rather than your entire story. Until then, be gentle with yourself. You're carrying far more than most people can see, and every small step forward counts.